you mentioned now you're eager to thin your audience, and I'm curious to know, like, what is your agreement with your audience, and who now are you looking to connect with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm half joking. I think that the result of trying to shrink my audience might be that my audience grows, but it's really, I guess I'm just, I sometimes I hit this point of weariness and exasperation, where like a lot of the stuff I write is kind of, I point out the one of the patterns, because this is pretty a roundabout answer to your question, but one of the patterns at work, like I look at what are the deep social patterns that allowed this whole pandemic catastrophe to happen. Mm-hmm. What makes us vulnerable to totalitarianism? What makes us vulnerable to manipulation by psychopathic elites, if that's your narrative? Like even if we accept that there are psychopathic elites, where do they get their power? It's not because they have bigger muscles. It's because they have the complicity of the public, mm-hmm. of millions and millions of decent people, even in the police forces. The police forces aren't riddled with psychopaths. The army isn't riddled with psychopaths. You know, like where are they getting their power? So it's our acquiescence. So this is the question: what makes us so vulnerable to manipulation? Mm-hmm. And one of the deep patterns that I write about quite a lot is the pattern of diagnosing any problem as being caused by a villain. Mm-hmm. It's actually the same mentality as the germ theory of disease. Mm-hmm. Any illness, like find the pathogen. Any social problem, find who we can blame for it. Mm-hmm. The immigrants, the Jews, the white supremacists, the Trumpers, Donald Trump, the bankers. Like, I mean, left and right do pretty much the same thing. Mm-hmm. So that pattern makes us vulnerable to anybody, any demagogue who says, there's the enemy in our midst. Like we're primed to accept that narrative, and it makes us easy to manipulate. Mm-hmm. So I write about that a lot. And so it's a critique of the default habit of taking sides. Mm-hmm. And then people might respond with, but Charles, obviously those are the bad guys and these are the good guys. And by trying to understand the enemy, we're giving them a free pass. We're letting them off the hook and we're not holding them accountable. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. But I get tired of explaining that every single time I write something. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, maybe I just won't even bother to explain. And the people who get upset and don't understand that pacifism is not the same as acquiescence, mm-hmm. and it's not the same as passivism, and that in fact, the more deeply you understand your enemy, the better you'll be able to fight, and you might not even have to fight. Like if you believe that your enemy is just demonic and just pure evil, you'll never understand them. And very rarely is anybody just pure evil. You know, you get to know these people. I was reading Naomi Wolf's excellent book, The Body of Others. Mm-hmm. And she's describing like being in this, you know, super elite gathering, you know, and everybody has their yacht, you know, and their private jet. And they're talking about the Syriza government in Greece that's trying to resist the austerity measures, and like everybody's all very sophisticated, you know, and talking about art and the opera and whatever. And like, these are just, you know, what these hominids do in that particular setting that they're in. They're not any more evil than, you know, a bunch of guys at the football game, you know. This is just what human beings do, what we are. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to end up jousting against windmills. Like you're going to create enemies in the image of your own fear and perception. And the result is endless war. So like, I guess, I don't know, rather than like preempt all of the possible objections every time. And that's just a superficial level. I like to go really, really deep, mm-hmm. into like the psychology, into the spirituality, like all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Without having to like apologize for it, without having to say, okay, it's okay to, because then people are like criticizing me for, Charles used to be like so engaged with actual practical issues. And now there's all this, new age spiritual mumbo jumbo. And like, okay, so here's another, am I talking too much?
Not at all.
Okay. So here's another thing, like another of my internal patterns that comes up in all of this is like childhood stuff about trying to keep everybody happy, trying to keep mom happy, and trying to keep dad happy at the same time, and losing myself. Mm-hmm. So to me, like shrinking my audience really is about just not caring about that anymore.